Corsair, our non-stimulant, thermogenic, and recomposition agent. Corsair is a super cool product because it's gonna help you utilize turning your white adipose tissue, which is for storage of fat, into brown adipose tissue, which is gonna help with energy production. So this is great to use for a competition prep or in your weight loss phase. So you can stack it with a stimulant-based thermogenic, or you could also use it in your off-season or muscle building phase to help keep you lean and mean. Corsair.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little neurotic about my sleep. And we all know in order to feel our best, build muscle, lose body fat, sleep is a big part of it. When I started incorporating cured nightcaps as part of my wind down routine, it truly changed the game in terms of having a good night's quality sleep and waking up feeling refreshed. The thing that makes the nightcap stand out isn't the already properly dosed CBD to help with general aches, discomfort, and mood, but it's the added CBN that takes this product to the next level. CBN supports your body's natural sleep rhythms throughout the night for deep restorative sleep that leaves you feeling ready to take on anything the next day. No grogginess or harsh side effects. I like to take these nightcaps with me when I'm traveling or if I'm experiencing higher stress than normal. Pairing the nightcaps with either Zen or a few drops of one of their CBD oils really hits the spot. Making sure to check out all of Cured's amazing products online. Use the code, all one word, for a discount at checkout.
Welcome back to the Pro Physique Code, guys. We got a lot to go over. We're going to try to be brief with the show notes because we had the Wasatch and then we have Girl Power this weekend. And we could even talk a little bit about Pittsburgh Pro, which is in 3 weeks. But there's just a lot going on, and we're going to do a fun Q&A today. And I got some great questions. I think you guys got some too, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we might have to do the extended version today because I feel like when people ask questions, it's kind of the question that a lot of people are thinking, but you only get 1 or 2 people to ask it. Because every time I do like a YouTube video on my channel, like addressing a question, I'll get all these comments like, how did you know that's what I was thinking? And I feel like as a fitness culture, there's like a consciousness that kind of like follows these trains of thoughts.
Exactly.
And competing is happening now. So like there's lots to discuss. Yeah, so I guess we'll get right into it. No surprise in Wasatch.
No, I think we called it exactly last week. We said, I think we called it and said Amy and Brittany were going to be splitting first and second, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I think there were some surprises. I'll give you my quick surprises. On that podcast, I mentioned Chantel Hall. She did end up in 7th, so she was, good. And then I think the biggest surprise for me, because I saw her in the UK, was Alison Testu moving up to 4th. I think she finished 4th. From I think she got 7th or 8th in UK and just wasn't a factor. This show she was definitely a factor. Looked much more bikini. Waistline came in. So good for you, Allison. Like, that was awesome to see. She's a sweetheart. It's been nice, seeing her in multiple cities, and she's going to Pittsburgh now. So,
okay.
And then the surprise of the show was Wong Person. Obviously, I'm saying her name wrong, but
yeah, I know exactly who you're talking. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but she got 3rd. We'll refer to her as H. It starts with an H. I don't know.
Yeah, Wang or Huang Person, striking physique, tons of muscle, great shape. Yeah, so that was the one that I don't know if it was her pro debut or if it was one of her first pro shows, but certainly, that's one to watch. That's one to watch where like, okay, she might show up at one of these shows and just get a win on a day, right? If she keeps getting better.
I feel like, Paul, because you were there in person, I feel like, at least from the live stream I saw, I feel like most people brought it at this show. Like, it looked like there was a bunch of people that were pretty on.
So big shout out to Gilco. So they are now working with the promoters the day before the show, setting up the lights, changing the angles. So the backdrop, he even didn't like that it had wrinkles, so he had it stretched. Like, he's paying attention to things that most people aren't paying attention to. He's backlighting properly, over the shoulders. He's got the lights at the right angle. So if you're in the first row, you look incredible. That was the best lighting I've seen at a show this year. They were also in this huge venue, so there was no limitations on the height of the lights. So yeah, huge shout out, because Gilco is really changing at least, you know, from a spectator's point of view, if you're not at the show, oftentimes you can have no idea how people look, right?
Yep.
I was looking at the girls on stage, looking at the live stream when I, you know, because I had it playing on the sides, and I was like, because I sit right in the middle, right next to Zach, and I'm like, dude, like, you killed it. Like, this is crazy looking. So yeah, I think
You
conditioning
mean
was
Mitch,
pretty
right?
good. It was better than Clash. The overall group was much
Yeah.
better than Clash. But when you add an Amy, the level goes way up.
Sure.
Brittany is a whole nother animal this year. She's gonna be winning some shows. Like, she is just a whole other level. So yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that surprised me, well, I just was curious, like going into the show, Casey Samsel's coming back after like what, 4 or 5 years. She used to be a top level Olympian, or well, I don't think she's ever won the Olympia, but she used to be up there in
Got
the mix.
fourth. I think she got fourth.
Okay, yeah. So I was just really curious. Like, I was just really excited and curious to see how she was going to do at this show. And I think she was in the mix of like number 16. So it was interesting. And it'll be interesting because I saw her on the list this weekend for Girl Power. So it will definitely be interesting to see, you know, what changes she makes. I think I was looking at the pictures and just her overall look. And I think there were a couple of things she could just easily tweak with like posing and just like the overall stage look. So it'll be interesting to see what she brings this weekend.
Yeah, Casey was in third call outs and stayed on the outside of third call outs. So she was not a factor at any, and I'll say this, she has kind of the current standard that they want. She has the hourglass shape. She's got the stunning, and I think she even added some muscle. She looked more dense in the shoulders and the glutes. It was just something was off with her stage look. Like, she was either flat or I don't think she was, there was just something, she didn't pop, right? Color was a little light.
I feel like
So
it could even have been just the fact that like she hasn't competed in 4 or 5 years. I'm sure she felt a lot of
100%.
pressure and probably had those stage jitters all over again. So that's why I'm sitting here thinking, okay,
I
well,
saw her and chatted with her. She seemed super chill. Like, it didn't seem like,
she's always that
but
way. She's
yeah,
so chill, I feel like. So that's why I think it'll be very interesting to see, okay, now that she's got that show under her belt, to see if she comes in drastically different just from a like confidence standpoint at Girl Power.
she's not on the list here.
Oh, I thought she was on the Girl Power list.
No, not if it's in alphabetical order, she's not there.
Let me look.
No. Unless
It
it's
is
Casey
alphabetical order.
Samsel, right? She doesn't have a hyphenated name, or no.
Where did I
This is a big list.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
another weekend with just one show. So we'll be brief with that. So yeah, so the in my opinion, I mean, they got it,
30.
definitely got it right at Wasatch. I think Amy, that might have been the best I've ever seen her. She was really
Yeah.
good. Like, she was, especially at finals, she was a little bit flat at prejudging, but she came back to finals, which was only maybe 4 or 5 hours later, and I was like, oh, okay. She was fuller.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, she needed all of that to beat Brittany, because there were moments at prejudging when my eye went to Brittany and I was like, oh man, she's winning this pose, you know? But Amy's just, she's one hell of a competitor, man. Like, you just,
She's good.
yeah.
She's just
She
complete.
is
Like,
good.
her stage
Yeah.
presence is good. Her look is good. Her move,
Yeah.
everything is just polished with her. And I
Yeah.
know we talked after prejudging, Paul, and you
Yeah.
know, I was like, Brittany looked awesome, and Brittany did look amazing. And
Yeah.
he was like, she looked great. She's like, Amy is on too. Like,
Yeah.
and when look, this sport is one of those things that if you have someone that comes in and it is close and they have a proven track record, you know, human nature sometimes will kind of lean that way with it. But when she's on, she's on. I mean, Amy doesn't get the, you know, top calls at Olympia for no reason.
No. And she's, like I said, we talked about it before. Even when she's not at her best, she's still on. Like, she has,
Yeah.
you know,
She's
she's
never
been
truly
off.
missed. No.
So that just speaks to her consistency. And so, yeah, they got that right. Thrilled with Brittany. You know, what's funny, I always say this, like, when the incumbent, when everyone knows Amy's coming to win the show, the person that gets the most attention is usually the person standing next to them, because I don't think Brittany hasn't been on stage in a year. A lot of, you know, outside of the picture I posted a few days out, I don't think anybody knew what to expect. And I think her phone was blowing up. My phone was blowing up. Like, we were getting messages left and right. Promoters, judges, people, you know, messaging like congrats, you know, like, you brought it. So I couldn't be happier. I could be happier, but I couldn't be happier with what we did.
Completely.
Yeah, she looked incredible. Okay, I figured out why I'm confused now because there's that Instagram, the Bikini Pro News Instagram that always posts the list. And Casey's on that list for Girl Power, but now she's not on the list online on
Am I looking at the official competitor list? I don't. Yeah, I am.
yeah,
Unless
I just double
unless
checked.
she got added before 3 p.m. and they just forgot to put her on here. So we'll just have to see.
I guess so.
The rule is if you're not on the list by 3 p.m. on Monday, you do not compete. They are not messing around with that, because I've heard some names of people that try to jump into shows that they're like, nope. And it's people you would want at the shows. And not specific to the bikini division, other divisions. So yeah, people are finding out, like, hopefully coaches
Early.
are paying attention, because it's real easy to miss your show.
I mean, they kind of ran, not to get off topic with this, but like the Detroit Pro, there wasn't that many open bodybuilders there, and that was a great lighting, great prize money. And the issue was, I think everyone tried to jump in last second and they wouldn't let them in.
That's what I heard about the guy that got second in the Arnold South America. I heard that, I could be wrong, but I heard he tried to jump in and they were like, nope, too late.
Tonio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
yeah, would have been a
he
good
would
show
have
for
been-
him to jump into.
He would have been very interesting, because I feel like Martin won on shape and size, not on conditioning, and Tonio brings all of that. So it would have been interesting.
Yeah, would have been good. Would have been good to see. We'll see them all matched up in New York shortly.
So let's do a quick rundown of our first call out kind of predictions for here. I think it's pretty clear who's gonna.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious when you look at the list. I mean, unless Ashley K shows off drastically off, which I don't think there's a big chance of that. I think she's definitely our front runner here.
I think she's been waiting to get on stage until she was ready. I think she was probably considering some earlier shows and just was like, nope. And then she's like, now.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go down the list. So Maya, I didn't mention her, but I believe she got 5th at Wasatch, and she's very balanced. I mean, she looked beautiful at, I kept looking at her up on stage and backstage. I was like, man, she is stunning looking today. So I feel like she's going to get a win this year. Like, it's, she's running into some banging lineups right now, but
yeah, I think she'll be first call out. Yulia, probably
Marie
Kimberly.
Eve's on this list too. She got
Marie Eve, very, very interesting. She was a little bit off at the Clash, so she's had a month to regroup and come back, and let's see what she does. I think she's probably going to be the most disappointed person on this list.
Yeah.
Because she's gotten second twice now, right? So she sees Ashley K and she's like, so can she come in and beat her? Like, Ashley K is not unbeatable. We all remember, a couple of years ago, Ashley Little Ashlyn beat her at this show. So,
yeah,
bring it.
Oh, Allison Testu's on this list.
Tetsu. Yeah.
Based on what I saw last week, if she continues that trend, she's not consistent thus far in her career. I've seen her move around, but I feel like she's in a good headspace. We had some good chats, and I feel like she's in a good spot. So,
and we have Noelle. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but Noelle Z. And I know she placed like second call outs, I think, at Wasatch.
Yeah.
But she's coming into Girl Power, so she could potentially, I think, slide into that first call out.
Striking on stage, I would say, like, I don't think it was either her suit color or her hair color. Just she kind of blended. Everything blended, and she's very.
I had those same exact thoughts.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the suit color she did was like a lilac, and I think that for anybody that's a bit of a risky color, because it can kind of, it's like a pastel. It can kind of just blend you.
There's no contrast. Her hair, her tan, her suit, all matte, like, or in the same shade. There was no pop. So she could make a quick adjustment. She's very muscular. So she's another, and then I think potentially again, Chantel Hall is in this show. So she's another one that could be in that first call out. Jessica Miller's another one. She's a local girl with all the muscle and all the shape. We talked about it last time. She was a little bit soft at Wasatch. She was someone that when she was in her poses, I thought she could be first call outs, but there was,
when she moved, you could see it.
Issue. I don't know how much she can fix in a week. I would have had her straight away busting it. So yeah, she's it's there's even Mia Barshi. I've seen her before. Alyssa Blessing was in the mix at this last show. Stacey Correa wasn't just quite lean enough, but man, talk about muscle and shape. Like, yeah, so it's funny. You start to get to know some of these girls, and I gotta shout out Shanika. I think one of our better packages She actually got moved in her call out. She was in third call out, but she got moved in. So I was like, not for nothing, but you beat Casey Samsell, you know,
Right.
so she's just on the smaller side, but we're going to really bring her in tight and full, see if we can get a look for her. So yeah, it'll be a fun weekend.
It will. And Evan, are you going to be at Girl Power?
Planning on it. I'm moving this weekend, but I'm planning on being there. Yeah.
Cool. So we'll all three be there.
So it's going to be a good weekend, guys. We got some fun people coming into town. So I've got 3 really good amateurs doing it, so it's going to be fun. All right, so let's talk about the questions for today because we got a lot.
We do. I think some of these we can make probably just topics in general, but we may at the end of this do like a little bit of a rapid fire too with a couple of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
All right.
I got a good one to start on that I think is I've had a bunch of questions on. I think confuses people, and considering it's a prep podcast, I think it's perfect. So if a person becomes pro at Master Nationals, are they able to compete in any IFBB Pro show? Which, in another word, is saying if you earn your pro card in a Masters division, do you have to compete in Masters or can you compete in the Open? On the
That's
pro
an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
That's an easy answer. And the answer is you can, if you're a pro, you can compete wherever you want to compete with whoever you want to compete with.
And this is something a lot of people don't know either. If you get a pro card in men's physique, you are eligible to compete in any men's division you want.
Yep.
Yes.
Likewise for the women. Once you get a pro card, let's say you get a figure pro card, you can go down to bikini, you can go up to wellness or women's physique, whatever you want.
Yeah. A current great example of that would be like Angela White. She used to be wellness and now she's competing in bikini as a pro.
And she won her pro card in bikini, then did pro wellness, and now she's come back to bikini.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. And I think Frida Paulson was the same, right? She won her pro card in bikini and then she now does wellness.
Yep.
Urishna,
So
same thing.
Yep. Oh yeah,
Urishna
Urishna
used
was
to do
the original bikini girl that couldn't keep her legs down, right?
I cannot
Couldn't keep her
imagine
glutes down.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
I can't wait to see her return. Brett is giving me, like he said, her glutes have come way up. So, and you know,
She
was
doesn't even look
caught-
real.
No, but that's what you need to beat one of those Brazilian girls at the Olympia. So
Mhm.
Right. I have another kind of quick one. Well, I don't know if this will be quick, but we can kind of make it quick. Thoughts on OCB versus NPC for a first-time competitor for your first competition?
you know, it all comes down to if it's your first competition, ease of access. I mean, there are some tough OCB shows and there are some easy NPC shows, you know, so it's not necessarily like one's going to be easier. It just depends on the history of the show, the promoter. I always say when you're an amateur, try them all out. You never know. You might find your niche, right? So I'll say this. No one is close to the NPC right now. It's not close. Like, listen, I grew up going and competing in natural shows, getting my natural pro card. I love that phase. And honestly, back then, the NPC was still kind of like, you know, hit or miss. Now they don't miss anymore. NPC is like got their act together.
Yeah.
And they're constantly improving. They're improving the lighting. They're improving the backdrop. Everything is improving.
I mean, and you're getting your stage pictures after prejudging. Like my girls are getting their pictures within a few hours of getting on stage. Like,
yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
I think the overall experience for the athlete at an NPC show is so good. I know I've had a couple athletes that have done both, and I remember going to an OCB show last year for one of my clients, and it's a very different feeling. I think it's just a different feel overall. And I guess it depends really what OCB show you're doing. I know, like the Conquer is an OCB show that's at the beginning of May every year, and that is a phenomenal OCB show. Like the backdrop, it's amazing. But I know that I feel like there's a big difference in just how it feels. Like the OCB show I went to last year, it was just like backstage was super chill, no like rushing, you know, whereas at the NPC shows, it's usually a lot bigger backstage. There's a lot more like hurry up and wait or lots of like urgency. So it's just, I think, a very different feeling. And I think if you're questioning as an athlete, you know, which one to do, maybe try both or, you know, like you said,
yeah,
Paul,
like I said,
and I think
plan a couple.
Yeah, plan a couple and access. I mean, there's generally just going to be a lot more NPC shows that pop up where, as you know, OCB, there's not going to be as many. So that's probably going to play a big factor too.
Yeah, when it fits best in your schedule, right? That's a big part of it. And the good thing about the NPC is, especially if you live in a state like Florida that has a bunch of shows, is that if you aren't ready for a show, you don't have to do that show because there's one the next weekend or the week after that or the week after that or the week after that.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I think for the big difference right now is what like people like Mitch with Gilco and Phil with PCS are doing. I mean, honestly, like looking back at my earlier career, I wish I had the quality of imagery that they're getting now. Like, buy those videos, people. Like, those are that video of you, Evan, from Hurricane last year. Like, that is the greatest video you could ever possibly hope to get of your stage physique. And
It is.
I mean, and it's only happening at the NPC. I have clients do some of these smaller shows, and I'm like, ugh. So I'm even like now, like, oh, I want, when you go to pick a show, look at Gilco's show list.
Yeah.
I mean, look at PCS. Phil does great work too, and Zach. Some of these guys are just doing great things, but you're on stage for a few minutes, and so you really want to get the most out of it. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah, shout out to like Z-Rich and to Phil
Yeah.
and obviously to Mitch over there at Gilco. If
Yeah.
any of those three are at a show, I recommend picking that show because you're gonna have memories from that show. You're gonna be
Yeah.
able to capture them. And the
There was
last thing you
also
want to do is go through everything, get on stage, and not be able to get good pictures. The lighting be bad. Like, and there's some shows around here that I went to last year where I'm like, oof, like it's hard to kind of watch at times.
Well, I
Just
mean,
because you know how good it can be.
and you just won't share that content because you post it and it looks like you're 6-8 weeks out,
Yeah.
even though you're absolutely peeled up there. So versus like you said, I think before we got on the podcast, or even if we did talk about it on the podcast, like how good the lighting was at Salt Lake. Like I was like so excited because I'm like, man, these are going to be like these reels that they're posting are just like so pristine.
Crisp.
So that's something you don't get typically in the smaller organizations. Why? Because that lighting setup, that costs money. You've got to have the athletes to support it. So you've got to have people buying the video and photo packages. And, not to say that smaller shows aren't worth it, but experience all of it while you can, for sure.
Yeah.
The truth is we have a limited time in the sport and you never know what could happen. So the times you do step on stage, remember those times and pick shows that you can get some memories from. That's my suggestion.
Amen. All right, Paul, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I've got a couple good ones. This one I'm going to go into because it kind of relates to my trip to the UK. Would you say follow the European criteria or focus on the US criteria?
Is this coming from somebody who like lives in Europe?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, it's easy answer, I think, at least.
Well, and I think the answer was just proven correct. Like I could talk in hyperbole and be like, well, you should do what's the criteria, but look what just got rewarded at the last European show. Actually, the last two European shows, you had the Arnold UK and you had the One Bro Pro show, both won by girls coached by American coaches. So, I brought Otavia in very full, and so did Kim. Brought, Vanya in very full. So yeah, I in my mind, the reason, and I have asked the judges over there why the girls that are winning are so shredded, and he's like, that's all we have. We have to pick the best person from the criteria from this pool of girls. So the winner might be a little bit harder than they want him to be at the Olympia, but it's because she had the best balance, fullness, shape, but she was also peeled. So yeah, I think it's probably hard because, well, like I said, I hope the next European show, the girls adjust. They saw Otavia, they saw Francesca, both place well, the very full look. Hopefully they adjust and come into their shows fuller.
And one thing that they're doing now too is they're sending over to the European shows a lot of the American Olympia judges now. They're sending to the European shows. This isn't like a whole different.
Almost
Some
always.
shows, almost always, there are people that are head judging these shows are from the United States, trying to uphold the standard and making sure that it all equals out.
Yeah.
It didn't used to always be like that.
And then they're having the people on the panel with them discuss with them. And so when we do,
what's the difference?
When we're not there, that's who's judging. Now, the guy that was judging the UK show I went to, I thought he was European. His name was Maz Ali. I always see his name as the list. After the show, I walk up to talk to him. American. I'm like, where do you live? He's like, New Jersey. I'm like, what the heck? So yeah, he's like, no, I work very closely with, the Pittsburgh crew. He knows, all those people. So they're discussing it. He was on the judging panel at the US Arnold, so he's very in tune with what they want. So yeah, so I would say focus on the standard, because if you're trying to plan for a show in Europe and you want to get a pro card and there's a pro show there, more than likely you're going to get a US judge head judging that show and
Mhm.
making that decision. So yeah. Yeah. So that was my question, right?
Yes,
That was your question.
All right, so go ahead. Let's keep going.
Okay, I have a good one. Tips for networking in the bodybuilding community.
Get out
Go to
your seat
shows.
and go places.
Yeah, go to shows, go to seminars.
Oh, speaking of which, we can roll that one perfectly because someone just asked me, do you have any events planned in Texas? I want to see you guys.
Weird.
So all of us are going to Texas, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I
So
am.
the Texas Pro in August, it's an event. We're going to do a booth at the show. We'll have probably a few athletes in the show, but on Sunday at Hidden Gym, we are doing a seminar. Details will be on our website soon.
Yes, I'm excited for that.
So,
Yeah. So yeah, seminars, go to shows. Trying to think what else. I mean, those are the best. That's the best way to do it. I mean, even if you don't know anybody, go alone. You don't have to have somebody to go with. I cannot tell you how many times, like when I was first getting into the sport, I just went to things alone, and yeah, it's kind of intimidating, but that's how you meet people. You'll get to talking with somebody, you'll exchange maybe Instagram handles with them, and I think it's just a great way to get to know other athletes in the
that's
sport.
how we met. I was at Europa walking around.
Exactly. And I
Lexi
came
was
up
walking around and we just started chatting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like a little fangirl. Yeah. But yeah, and then, going to seminars and shows, you get to know not only the athletes, but the promoters. You can, if you see coaches that you want to meet, you get to meet coaches. So I think that's just a very valuable way to network.
And put a smile on your face and be nice.
Yeah.
And respect people's time and approach people. If you smile at somebody and you walk up and you're smiling ear to ear and you say, "Hey, how are you?" Like I'm introduce myself, and almost no one is going to give you a bad reaction. And if they do, fuck them. Like, come on now.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
The most I'll say is like, hey, I got to go backstage, but I can talk to you after prejudging or, something like that. So the most I'll ever say is like, I'm busy in this moment, but please come up and say hi. Like,
Yeah.
we love to interact. I think most of us do. So really networking, I think a lot of people like, I've heard people even say like, oh, I don't want to pay to go to this seminar. And I'm like, well, you're thinking of it as like paying to go to a seminar, but you don't realize the amount of connections you're going to make of like-minded people that are in your
Right.
field. Yeah, it was almost like going back to college for me. Going back to college was the same way. I got to spend time with Dr. Campbell. I met Steven. Like it puts you in a position where you're around like-minded people. So whenever someone's like, oh, how do I get into coaching competitors? I was like, A, compete, B, go to shows, like just go. I don't care if you have no clients, one client, just go be around the sport like that. You just got to immerse yourself in it.
mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And if you truly love it, that's how you succeed at things. Like, Paul, I go to shows all the time. I don't have clients in because I like to be around. I like to help. I like to answer questions. Whatever I can be of value, I'm happy to provide that because I just love the sport. And that shows through when you truly love it.
Yep. And that's how it starts. And then eventually you're going to go to shows because you have to be there.
You have to be there.
So
Yeah.
that was a good one. All right, Evan, you're up.
All right. I just had it up. Let's see here. In what ways can traveling on an airplane impact your physique? And what would you recommend arriving before a show?
This is a good question because I feel like there is a little bit of like a stereotype that flying can cause you to retain water. And I think that can be the case for some people. However, I mean, I don't know about you guys. And I also think this comes with just the more you do it, but like whenever I fly, I don't feel like I don't get swollen. I don't get bloated. I think you want to make sure you're drinking enough while you're flying. I think that's where a lot of people may mess up. They're just not staying hydrated. But I would not worry too much about getting a ton of water retention from flying. And if you are worried about that, I think that's when, if you're flying to a show, you should get there a couple of days early. That way, if you do get a little bit of water retention from flying, or sometimes this happens to me, like if I wake up really early for a flight, go to the bathroom in the morning, and that can kind of set you back. So if you're worried about that, maybe fly in, and have an extra day or two just chilling in the hotel before your show.
Yeah, like I think you can absolutely retain water for flying. Some people do. Some people dry out when they fly. Some people just completely change with that. There's a couple different things that I like to implement depending on the person. I won't kind of go into details with those now, because I think they're really good, and I kind of want to save those. But I think flying, it's the stress of it too. I think can cause a lot of issues with people. Um, Here's the thing too, make sure you move. So if you can get an aisle seat, get up and walk around a little bit if it's a longer flight, that helps.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and look, this is where sodium and water is important to people. Like, especially if you're flying before you get to shows, then it can dehydrate you when you fly. And a lot of times if you fly, you get dehydrated and your sodium bounces off, it can cause you to actually gain weight and look a little puffy. So there's a few different things that kind of happen with flying. But hey, here's the deal. If you get there a few days early, all that's going to fall off anyways. You don't have to worry about it.
Right. And I think another thing to keep in mind too is if you're flying, like, where are you flying to? What's the difference in climate, right? So if you're flying from like Las Vegas to Florida, obviously that's a very dry climate to a very humid climate and vice versa. So that's something, to keep in mind as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
also the altitude, it's,
Yeah.
when you fly to higher altitudes, I notice people tend to look a little drier the first 24 hours. But yeah, so if your show's on Saturday, if you're flying, get there Thursday, right? So that way you have a night to sleep. Friday, a little circuit, little cardio, your normal routine, and by Saturday, you're going to be back to normal. So yeah, I try not to have people fly the day before the show also, because if you get a delay, if you miss your flight, stress
Right.
is going to skyrocket. You're going to be afraid to miss check-ins. Then you're going to be chasing your tail, trying to get your tan, all those things. So yeah, just, if you stress out, then make sure you prepare ahead of time. So yeah.
So
Right.
But I don't see huge swings. Typically I believe what you guys said, drink plenty of water. And also if the flight's longer, get up a few times and stand up, because when you're sitting, blood is pooling and that can cause, some of that stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So I like this question. It's a pretty general question, but we can break it down. How long do you commit to the same amount of calories when cutting?
as
I
long
mean,
as long
we do weekly check-ins.
yeah,
So
as long as
now,
you're making progress,
yeah. So
enough progress.
I'll say this: weekly check-ins are fine at the beginning of prep. As prep condenses, probably doing more than once a week check-in, especially
Yep.
if we're not seeing progress. If I got a girl that's just like pound a half, pound a half, pound a half, I'm cool. I'm not even worried about seeing her. But if I just am making changes and nothing's happened, I'm like, hey, check in 4 days. Hey, check in 3 days. Let's talk every day. Hell, right? Peak week, we do daily check-ins. So commit to those calories for about a week. Calories, cardio, sleep, making sure all things are equal, about a week, I'd say. That's if you're like waiting every 3 days, you might not even give yourself enough time to see the change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also too, go ahead, Lexi, then I'll go.
No, I was going to kind of just echo what Paul said. I think that you do have to give your body, like, I would agree, a week before you can really decide, okay, is this working for me, or do I need to get a little bit more aggressive with the protocol? But yeah, I mean, I've had some clients that, we don't change their macros for 4+ weeks because their progress is smooth sailing. So it's like, why change something if it's working, right? Why make things harder than they need to be? And plus, especially in prep, there's also a fine line between progress happening too slow, but also progress happening too quickly, or weight loss happening too quickly. That can be another variable to look out for. So yeah, so I think that it's the weekly check-ins, like Paul said, at the beginning of a prep, weekly check-ins, but then towards the tail end of prep, getting to those twice a week check-ins, or even more frequent check-ins, just because the body is changing a lot more rapidly at that point.
Yeah, I think a bunch of factors play into it. Obviously, when you're deciding when to change things on there, I think some good look, if you're at the same calories and you're not hungry at all and your energy's kind of blah and your digestion's not the best, then probably something needs to happen. And then might not necessarily be based around your calories. Could be a few different things. And look, guys, we could talk about all this flexibility and prep all day long. And while that is nice and is really, really great for our lives, if we want to be the best we can be with it, then try to standardize everything the best that you can, because that makes it predictable. Because a lot of times people will be on the same calories. I had a client that was like this, that we've been 3 weeks on the same calories. It was a little drop. And then this week she had like 2.5% of her body weight drop with no difference on there. The only difference was she just switched out one food source for another food source. That's the only difference she did with it. I had another one that something very similar happened. The only difference she had is she just slept better. Right. So it had nothing even to do with when it comes to the food on there. But typically, yeah, you don't need to change food unless we're not, look, if we're pressed and we're trying to get somewhere and stuff isn't happening, we're going to need to check in every few days. And if we need to drop the hammer, we're going to drop the hammer, because that's what you have to do.
Yeah,
But
I would like agree with what you just said, Evan, about, when it's in prep, it's or when you're in prep, it's a lot more about just sometimes the calories, right? It's not always the calories that are the issue, or the macros that are the issue. Sometimes it's a food source. Sometimes it's, hey, we need to take a recovery day, like no cardio, no training. Sometimes it's just sleep, stress, like a lot of those variables I think people forget about, and they just think about, oh, progress isn't happening, let's get more aggressive with my food. And it's not always that's not always just the right or the only answer.
and I'll bring this up too, and this client knows she listens to the podcast, so I'm sure she'll know who I'm talking about here. She wrote me a big email. We're just doing a mini cut, and I think it was 200 or 300 or 400 words about why she pulled sweet potatoes out, and now her weight dropped a ton of weight. Like she dropped crazy amount of weight this week. I think like 4 pounds she dropped this week, and was like, hey, like I think I need to add them back in though, because they're good. They're calorically dense. They have a bunch of micronutrients. And I was like, but your body doesn't digest them well, obviously. So if you want to try to work them back in, fine, but understand that your body obviously does not do well on that. Find something else for your fiber source. It does not have to be sweet potatoes. And she emailed me back. And it's like, yeah, I tried it this morning. It was really felt bloated all day long. I was like, there you go. There's your answer. You don't have to have a certain food. If your body doesn't agree with it, don't eat it. And just because you like it, liking something and wanting to do something doesn't mean it's going to work.
And this is the problem with food meal plans. When someone's, prescribed a meal plan and they're told like this is what they have to eat, a lot of those issues can come up. So you can be creating issues that don't need to exist for a silly reason.
And that's why my meal plans, I stick with like such simple carb sources. It's because some people don't digest. A lot of people do not digest potatoes well. A lot.
Well, that's why
I find the same thing with whey. I find so many people are stuck, and I go, just pull out whey for a couple days. And like, oh my gosh, how do I do that? I'm having 2 shakes a day. I go, let's see. Sure enough, boom. I feel great. I'm like, yeah, so you probably have an allergy to something in the whey, either dairy or lactose or something. And, I think I even think there's something going on with the manufacturing of whey, because it's just so common now to me to pull out whey.
Yep.
Whey, dairy. That's why if I'm ever, we have to go, or if I ever get to a point with a client where I do have to put them on a meal plan and prep, it's kind of a collaborative effort. Like I'll have them send me a list of protein sources, carb sources, fat sources that they know that they digest extremely well. That way we can, customize the meal plan towards them and what they digest best.
Yeah. And that's the value of, being flexible and understanding, okay, so if I can swap out the sweet potato for whatever rice or whatever carb source you're going to swap it out, it is better for you. That's one of those scenarios. I always say there's no bad foods, but if your body is fighting you, then it's bad for you specifically. That doesn't make the food bad. It just makes it bad for you.
Exactly.
Look, there always doesn't have to be a reason either. Okay. Like you don't have to dive into 100%. Why does this not work for me? Sometimes things just don't work for you. Just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate it.
Right. Okay, I have a kind of an interesting question. So this person asked, is prepping harder when you're working a 9 to 5 versus working from home or being an influencer? So I thought this was like an interesting question, because I wouldn't necessarily consider any of us, like, I wouldn't say we're influencers, but we work from home. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this?
I think prepping's way easier when you work a 9 to 5 job.
I found myself like mentally, it was easier mentally because, I had a job to do all day. I didn't think about prep. When you're home all day and your pantry's right there.
Right. No, I was going to say the same thing. I guess I've kind of done, I've never worked a 9 to 5 in prep, but I did do my in-person training. I think while I was in prep, I can't remember, but I do feel the same. I feel like when you have a 9 to 5, I feel like it seems like that would make it harder. But really, I think when you work at home, and especially when you are in the depths of prep and you get so hungry and so fatigued, like when you're at home all day, like that's all you can think about, especially when you are a hop, skip, and a leap away from the pantry, right? Whereas when you're working a 9 to 5, you're around other people, you're just a lot more distracted throughout the day. So I think the only thing that I would say would be harder from a prep standpoint, if you worked a 9 to 5, is just like, for me personally, would just be packing food. You know, you're having to spend some time in the morning packing up all your food for the day, making sure you have all your food to get you through the day. So I feel like that sense would be a little bit harder. And that is one of the nice things about working from home. But you kind of, I don't know, you pick and you choose your battles. I feel like there's pros and cons for both.
Yeah, and look, if you're on prep, you're prepping your meals anyways for the most part. So you just got to take a few more minutes to toss them together. Do them the night before. It don't take but an extra like 5 minutes to do. I mean, I think I've said this before. The easiest preps I had mentally were the preps that I spent the vast majority of the times in hotel rooms, which you would think would not be the case because I had to worry about packing my food, traveling my food. My mind was occupied with how to get my food there, not based on how I felt or looked.
Right,
And
right.
that takes away a lot of the anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said too for, I feel like a lot of competitors are this way, where when you travel, you almost like you drop weight because you only have the food that you bring with you. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I pack food with travel, like I don't pack a ton of volume or vegetables. Therefore, usually I'll just drop weight without even trying when I travel, just from less volume. So I feel like that's a thing too.
Like I have a running joke with Daraja because every time she travels, she drops weight. But my theory with her is it's because she's pretty sedentary. And I don't think people realize airports can be exhausting between dragging your bags from your car to the check-in desk, walking to the gate. Like you are doing more than you would be doing if you were just sitting at home.
Right.
You can burn us. But that Salt Lake airport, it's a 30-minute walk to the gate. I tracked it. Yes. I was like,
Oh,
man, yes, the Southwest gates, you got to go in through the terminal, you go under the entire airport, pop out the other side, and it's all walking. And
wow.
I hate those like movers. I just walk next to them.
Yeah. That's the way it was the last time I went to Houston too. I swear it was a
Yeah.
30-minute walk from the gate to the baggage
Oh,
terminal.
that's funny. A little
Yeah.
bit different here than the Tampa airport. Because
I got off. I remember it was like 10:50, and I said, "Hey, I'm off." You know, Brittany was picking me up, and so I go, "It's 10:50. I'll be right there in a few minutes." It was 11:20 by the time I got there. I was like, "What in the hell?" Yeah.
That's so funny. Oh, goodness. All right, who's next? Evan, you have another good one?
Let's see here. All right, pretty easy one here. Energy drinks on prep, even if there's zero sugar. What are your thoughts on
Oh,
that?
they are a
Again,
saving grace sometimes. That's what
look,
I'm going to say.
I have energy drinks a lot. I don't understand like the demonization around them. I really don't. Look, are they the best things in the world? Are there some that are cleaner than others? Yes, there's some that are cleaner than others. Would it be probably better for you just to drink black coffee? Probably. Um, are they the end of the world horrible? No. I wouldn't drink 3 or 4 of them a day, but if you're on prep, have an energy drink. It's not going to kill you. Chances are you're taking pre-workout with a bunch of garbage in it anyway. So who
If you
cares?
count like Mountain Dew, I probably have 3 or 4 caffeine beverages a day. But yeah, the energy drinks, the thing you can start to do, some of those are so high in caffeine, like 300 milligrams. You can start to really desensitize the caffeine in prep. That can become a problem because, you know, I consider those like bullets in the gun. And as you get leaner, as you get more tired, having the ability to like, you know, take something and feel better, if you ruin that because you were doing 500 milligrams a day of caffeine at the beginning of prep, that can be an issue. So that would be my only concern, not the drinks themselves, but the effect of caffeine.
Just when you're consuming them too, like don't consume an energy drink in the evening hours, then you're not going to be able to fall asleep, and that's not something you want to dabble with in prep. But honestly, I drink energy drinks and like in prep or an improvement season, just from the standpoint of I love the way they taste. And to me,
Mhm.
it's just like a nice kind of, I always like to joke and say it's like drinking like 0-calorie candy, because that's literally how it tastes to me.
Yeah.
And I've never really drank energy drinks for the energy standpoint, because I just don't feel like I get like buzzed from it afterwards, but I just drink it because I love the taste. And there are times in prep where like it is a saving grace, like carbonated beverages, but just energy
Yep.
drinks are saving grace. And that is like the one thing I look forward to in the afternoon. So I typically have no issue with my competitors having energy drinks. Usually though, like peak week, we'll cut those out or we'll cut those back, just to keep things nice and tight, because carbonation can sometimes cause a little bit of excess, just bloat.
Yeah, I think I for most people, I pull out stuff like that on peak week, at least the last like 3 or 4 days of things, I pull it out. But also too, there's times that I don't, because if I look at an athlete, I'm like, it's not going to make a lick of difference if we pull this or don't pull this. At this point, then I'm not going to make someone pull something that's literally not going to make a difference with it.
Right,
Because
right.
like we talked about in previous stuff, right? There's athletes that come over like that are in tough spots that have already committed to shows that are not necessarily going to be ready by the time this show comes around. And I'm not going to make their life any harder for no reason if it's going to be no benefit to it. If we pull something or we change something, it's for a reason, right? Like if we're trying to get a tad bit drier and pulling this out is going to help with a little bit of that, then sure, we'll do it at that point. But sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't on peak weeks with it. And it's different for every person too. Look, I like Paul, like you said, there was 1 year that I pulled out all protein for like 3 weeks leading into a show, and I think that was the best and hardest I'd ever looked.
What do you mean you pulled out all protein?
All protein supplements, protein powders.
Oh, I was like,
Not all protein.
like zero
powders.
protein? Wow.
Sorry. Yeah, that'd have been interesting.
That would be interesting.
Because I found out it was the brand of protein I was using at the time with it, but it's everybody is different. Every person is different. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I got a couple good ones here because these are really, really prep related. I'll start with this one. If your client has 24 pounds to lose and 13 weeks of prep, would you go for it or not? And I think my first question would be 24 pounds out of how much, right? Are they 124 and they need to go to 100? Not happening. Are they 224 and they need to get to 200? Quite possible. Are they on a good amount of calories and low cardio? Quite possible. Are they already really calorie restricted and lots of cardio? Not possible. So I wouldn't, in my mind, I would not want to be chasing 2 pounds per week for a moderate to small female. For a man, that doesn't seem that drastic, but it's also, if you're chasing conditioning, you're not going to be your best. If you're right up to the deadline trying to get stage lean going into peak week, sorry, you're not going to be your best. Now, what I will do, let me add this and I'll let you guys go. I will Jedi mind trick this person. I'll say, hey, let's go. We can get there. A month out, I might say, hey, we need to have another show in mind, right? Because sometimes if you tell them, no, you're not going to make it, they can just kind of F off and screw themselves up. Whereas if we get close enough, I can go, okay, now we're 6 pounds off. We got 4 weeks to go. Let's pick another show. We can do a testing peak week, things like that. So I hate chasing conditioning, but it's a case by case basis, and there's not enough information here to know.
Yeah, look, if we got a client that's willing to put in that extra time for shows, that is a music to my ears. Like that is awesome. I love that Jedi mind trick thing, Paul. I'm gonna steal that one. Because people will, and this is actually a conversation that I had with someone the other day about we're just starting prep. I was like, I know this seems like this is a long time. This is not a long time. So we need to go in this like we're like 10 weeks out at this point because we got a good amount to pull off.
I will say that's been my motto for probably the last year, and I think the results are showing that, is I'm no longer going, yeah, we're about on track. I'm acting like we're behind schedule every week until we're ready, right? So I'm not just waiting and waiting. So I think that mindset, especially at the beginning of prep when you've got more energy and you've got more body fat and you got more, And then the thing is, when you get close to a show, you can literally, people will do anything. If you're 16 weeks out, it's very difficult, 10 weeks out. But when you're like 3-4 weeks out, people are like, coach, I'll eat dirt. And they mean it. So yeah, you can get away with a little more the closer you get.
Yeah. And I do think that obviously this question, it definitely depends on how much body weight in total we're talking, like what the individual's frame is. But it's also, I feel like we've all been to shows and you can sometimes see those competitors that just look really, really tired and dieted down. And that definitely shows on the physique. So if you're, well, realistic, or like, could you drop, that amount of weight in that short amount of time? Sure, anything is possible, but are you going to look really, really probably depleted, dieted down? Muscles are probably not going to be full on stage. Yeah, so that's something to consider as well.
You're going to compromise your training, your ability to keep and retain muscle. I mean, there's a reason why we kind of take the approach we do. Gradual fat loss is much more likely to result in a better body. This isn't just weight loss, it's a competition. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Actually, I got a good question here, unless you got one right top of your head.
No, go
You got
for
one
it.
right top of your head, let's see. This one's interesting. I actually don't know how to answer it. It says, I got a dumb one for you. If you get sick after you eat and throw up, do those macros still count? I actually had to sit back and think about this one because I think it depends on what you're talking about with it. If you're sick from being like a stomach virus or from overeating.
Yeah, it's probably partially
ways.
it's partially digested, but there's no way to know the answer.
Yeah.
The food comes up. No, but
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I would say as a general thumb, I know that, okay, technically, if you want to get really technical, you are like eliminating some of those macros, but I would just say no. Don't do that. Don't do that mental macro math. Like Evan, you said a few minutes ago, like you got to keep things simple, and sometimes overcomplicating things doesn't help anybody. And I would hope this isn't like an instance that is happening frequently. So I would just say, yeah, no. Once it goes in,
we do
count it.
not recommend binge and purge. That is not a strategy for prep.
No.
Like those people that just smell bread. I was like, what is the point of that?
I had a roommate in college. I kid you not. He would take a brownie. He doesn't watch this stuff. Doesn't matter. He would kill me if I told this. He would take a brownie, chew it up, and then spit it out in a cup and throw it away.
Oh, I've heard of
this.
People
Was a very large grown man too.
That is,
it was absolutely hilarious to watch.
I've heard of that. It's called like people like it is a like it's a type of eating disorder. Like there are people out there that do that. I think they're called like, I don't know if they're called like spitters, or I don't know, but I've heard of people doing that.
Spitters or quitters, Lexi?
Spitters or quitters, Lexi?
Oh yeah, interesting. That was an interesting question though. I've never been asked that.
All right. I love your naivete, Lexi. Okay.
No,
so I got a question.
I was just glazing right over that.
So Kaylee asks, thoughts on the training world? Everyone is an expert at reinventing the wheel. And this has probably been at the back of my mind for a while now. It does seem that there's almost too much nuance happening. And I think, if you go watch the best bodybuilders in the world, they're doing the same shit over and over that works for their body, right? Yep. It's adding muscle to your body is about finding ways to effectively train it, break it down, and for it to come back stronger. Overcomplicating things, it's just going to confuse a lot of people. So I don't know. I still think the best bodybuilders in the world, like, a couple of years ago, Daraja made this crazy transformation, and someone's like, send me her training plan. I said, okay, here's literally Daraja's training plan. It was 3 sets of 10 of side laterals, 3 sets of 10 of shoulder presses. People that have the genetic predisposition to put on muscle easily, just the basics work. And I think people that are on the fringe of that are always looking for like, oh, I'm doing my lat pull downs at the wrong angle. Maybe, but you might just suck at putting on muscle. Your body might just, what I'm saying? So like, I do think there is value in research and doing things. And, we try to surround ourselves with the people that are doing that research, but I also keep it simple, stupid. I like that. To me, that's just,
yeah, keep it simple, stupid. Because we live in an era right now where there are a lot of people posting, all these elaborate variations to things on Instagram. But I think that ultimately leads to a lot of paralysis by analysis. And then that's where people get really overwhelmed and start to overthink, oh my God, should I be doing this? But yeah, like you said, Paul, look at some of the best bodybuilders in the world. You're probably going to be really underwhelmed with what they're doing from a training standpoint. I know that like when I first got into weightlifting, I did more of like boot camp style workouts, right? So like my trainer at the time, he was always having us do these like crazy variations of things, right? But at the time, my goal was not aesthetic based. It was kind of just, okay, to be in the best shape I could be in, right? So I would say like, if that's your goal, Well, yeah, if you want to have a little bit more fun with certain variations, that's one thing. But if your goal is strictly aesthetic based and you're listening to this podcast and you're a competitor, like don't fall into the paralysis by analysis. Don't think you have to do all these crazy, wonky, banded variations. And, you don't have to go to a gym with the most elaborate machinery. Like the basics get it done.
I think if you're going to obsess over something, obsess over how to do the movement correctly and know how to feel the weight and actually train the muscle itself. I see, like, I train at a commercial gym now more than I ever have before. And when I walk in and I see people lift, I understand right away why they've
Yeah.
never made any progress.
Yep.
There's a big difference between someone who literally does lat pull downs like this and someone who may not completely, or someone that retracts their shoulders, or someone that actually knows to keep everything in front. That's a little bit of difference. But, I mean, guys, like if you see leg press and people are literally doing quarter reps on there, it's an easy way to know that they're not growing,
Yeah.
right? So instead of focusing so much on the movements that you're doing, know how to do the movement correctly and know how to feel the weight. Don't be in a rush. Don't use it like a checklist thing. Like if you are, I was training with a buddy the other day doing hack squats, and he was like, "How did that weight kill you?" I'm like, "Because I made it kill me." I was like, "I felt the weight the entire time of the way down on my quads, paused it and felt it the entire way up." And he got on there, was like, "Control that weight down and feel it in your quads. Use your quads to control it. Like concentrate on that." And he was fried after like 6 reps.
Right.
Fried. Because it's a completely different way of looking at things. And for those that don't like, I tell you, if you want to watch someone that really knows how to train, just go to like Nick Walker's YouTube channel and watch him train. That's like, he will do the most basic movements you've ever seen, and he does them perfectly, and he does them to failure. And that's what it is.
Same with, I used to watch a lot of like Phil Heath stuff, and you look back at Ronnie Coleman, who was doing these like 800-pound squats and deadlifts and things, and while it's impressive, Phil Heath got arguably similar results, and he's a very much like time under tension guy, right? Very much control the weight, perfect each rep, versus like instead of getting 15 reps, why not get 6 perfect reps? So yeah, don't overcomplicate it. Certainly some value in like isolating a muscle through certain activities, but I think it does get a little silly where people are trying to maybe separate themselves in an industry full of people training. They're not inventing new exercises. Like they're just not. Like we know how to train all the muscles now.
And you could put a perfect split together. I had a client that I put a split together, sent it over to her, and I was explaining like the reps in reserve to her, and the way she internalized all that was if she didn't get that reps in reserve correctly on that set, she would just do another set of it. So her workouts were taking like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh no, that is way too much here on things." So it's and there's also people that I can give a training split to that half-ass it.
Yeah.
And they're not going to get the results off it. It's all about the work that you're doing. And like John Meadows put it best when he said, dig yourself a hole and not a grave.
Nice. I like that.
Train hard.
All right. So I got two questions that are basically the same. As an amateur, how many shows should you do for the most accurate judge feedback? And then a different person, how many shows should a beginner do? So very, very similar. I would say minimum 2.
Yeah. Minimum 2. I think it's ultimately first things first, like being realistic. It's going to come down to, okay, like financially, how much can you do, right? Because shows, especially if you're going to travel, they're going to add up, but I would say minimum 2. If you can do more, like 3, 4, I don't think there's an issue with that. I do think there's such thing as doing like too many shows to the point where it's like, all right, like when you've done so many and you're just getting the same feedback and you're starting to look worse, like that's probably a point where, okay, you're doing more than you need to do, but I would say minimum 2, but if you can do 3, even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with at least 2 for our first show. Also talk to your coach too, because your coach is probably gonna, if he's seen you all the time and he's a good coach, like in the bikini world, I can tell you what the athlete's feedback is probably going to be before we even get on stage. And it's one of those things that once you do a show and you find out you like it, cool. Then what's your ultimate goal here? If we need way more muscle and you want to do a show just to get out there and do more shows, go ahead and do it. But if your goal is to make it to the next level or be extremely competitive with it, then maybe you just want to go into improvement season with that. Right. But the biggest thing is make sure you like it first. These people that want to have the perfect physique before they ever step on stage, I don't necessarily recommend that.
Yeah, you might be training for something that you don't actually enjoy. And your first show is always going to be anxious ridden unknowns. And then the second show, you'll be much more relaxed. You know,
I would
something
say
I do, I
Okay.
put my clients in the right shows to get feedback from the right judges.
Mhm.
Yes, I probably know what they're going to say, but it's always good for them to hear it from the judges too.
Plus, it
absolutely.
gets you in front of those judges, and those judges see that person, and then they're going to see the improvements. They're going to see the changes.
Yeah.
And again, that all works like, what's our goal? What's our overall goal? We set goals and we work backwards from them.
Yeah. I have an interesting question. Okay, how do you personally handle the bad actors in the bodybuilding / coaching space?
Bad actors.
Yeah, she used the term bad actors. I guess I would just say like, how do we, I don't know what the right word is, to just, how do we handle the negative people in the bodybuilding / coaching space?
I would put
think-
it people that are in there for themselves and not actually care about the athletes. I would put
But
those.
how do we personally handle it? Is that what the question
Mhm.
is?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why we do this podcast. I don't need to put out information. The goal for me is to raise the awareness of them. You know, we brought to attention a lot of bad coaches, a lot of bad coaching practices, so that anybody that's listening can make an informed decision, question the methods that they're doing. Now, I'm not saying we're always right, but I will say that we're always looking for the right way to do things. And there are certainly things that are wrong that we see. So the way we handle it is, you know, I can't directly address any coaches by name, because then it just comes off as sour grapes. No, I might tell you in person privately, because there's certainly some people that I'm, you know, not very fond of. But ultimately, the way is to put out good information, put out good athletes, and just spread it that way. Because I think a lot of the misinformation is based on, historically, you can't do XYZ unless you do this method, this way. This is what the pros do. Well, my goal is to have the most successful competitors on the planet, and then go, well, you can do it this way. You can do flexible dieting. You don't have to take diuretics. You don't have to take copious amounts of drugs. Like, there's ways to do this sport that I can make it a longer term sport, more longevity, better athletes. Yeah, and that's really the only way I address it. I'm never going to be someone that calls people out publicly. Like, I'm not, you know, one of those channels or one of these. No, that does me no good. I focus on my athletes, our coaches, and our information, and everybody else can get butthurt if they don't like what we have to say, but that's their problem, not mine.
Yeah,
And
I agree. I think there's gonna be sour apples in every industry. But I mean, clearly none of us, it's not like we're actively on social media picking fights with, getting into arguments with people. We're not, on Reddit, anonymously posting about people. Like, we just try to lead by example, right? And like, I think action speaks so much more than words. And what you said, Paul, like, we're just focusing on our athletes, putting out good athletes, and not only caring about the quality of the athlete like we're putting on stage, but also caring about that athlete as a person, right? And putting that person first, before just our general selfish needs of like, oh, I want to have a really, good looking athlete on stage. Like, we're always focusing on, okay, that, but also how is that person, like, really caring for that person, in mentally as well.
yeah, and look, if there's people that we typically, or that we don't normally get along with in this sport that are coaches, or it's more, it's not because of jealousy or anything like that with it. It's because if you don't have a person's best intentions in mind, it's apparent. It's apparent. And I'm just gonna leave it at that for now. It's gonna go on a little tangent with it.
Yeah.
Look, enough on that. I'm not gonna say anymore.
It's to me, it's a non-issue, really, because the way to resolve all of that is to just keep doing good work over a long period of time,
Yeah.
show the consistency, and then the rest will work itself out.
Yeah.
My intentions are to be the best coach in the world and create a methodology for prep that allows it to be better, a better approach, a better long-term approach for athletes to be successful both off stage and on. So whereas I know some coaches, they sure like to brag about how many pro cards they got, but they don't really like to brag about how many of those people that got the pro cards still compete or compete with them.
Right.
So, yeah.
You can run anyone to the ground for a few shows.
I've never heard Kim Odo brag about how many pro cards or Olympia titles he has.
Mm-hmm.
Just
You
saying.
don't hear Kim brag about a lot.
No. No, and you'll never hear me brag about it. If I'm sharing information, it's for the betterment. It's not to be like, hey, look at me.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think this will be our final question because it's a good
Perfect.
one. Have you ever had an athlete or coach badmouth you or your work, and how did you handle that? And yeah, absolutely. I think anybody that's doing anything in this world is probably going to get some negative feedback. So how
Mhm.
you handle it is directly related to the situation. So in my mind, every time I get something negative, the initial anger in me probably wants to retort, but I have to get rid of that. And I have to go, okay, what's driving this thought? Did I do something wrong? Can I be better? And oftentimes, even if the situation ends up where like the relationship is ruined, I get better because it forces me to go, okay, what could I have done differently in this situation? I think that's, it's the reason why all our clients get video replies, because I had people like, oh, your email replies are too short. I don't like it. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I fix this? Video replies became a thing. Now, I actually had a client last year complain that my video replies were too short. And I was like, wow, okay. So now we're getting, I didn't know there was a minimum requirement for my videos. How many coaches are even doing videos at this point every week
Right.
for their clients? So, I think constructive criticism and feedback is very valuable. But also I think a lot of that has gone away since, we do the consultations. I travel to all the shows. I always have a schedule available for talking to people. So yeah, criticism, if it bothers you, there's probably some truth to it. That's one thing I've noticed. If somebody says something about me and it goes right off my back, it's because I know in my heart, like, that's not true. If something pisses me off or makes me angry, usually there's it's rooted in some truth that I have to dig up and go, okay, how do I prevent this from being a problem in the future? And so, this is why our proprietary update system is an ever evolving thing. I
Yeah.
want us to have complete transparency with our athletes both ways, the updates and stuff. And so that we're making good decisions, we have open communication. So yeah, I'm I know Evan and I had a talk yesterday. He had a situation, and it's hard. The sport is hard. There's not a lot of loyalty in the coaching world. So when you find good athletes and good people, keep them. That's why I've got Evan and Lexi and all the team at Pro Physique. And I've got some amazing athletes, but just likewise, there's still the ability for, I've literally had a girl make a post saying I saved her life, and then a few months later DMing my clients saying that I wasn't a good coach and that they should go work with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's just, it is the reality, I think, of being in this industry, and you just have to know you're doing the right thing. And unfortunately, like, that example right there, you kind of have to kind of look at it from a standpoint of, okay, that person, clearly something is going on with them, right? Like, it's not, has nothing to do with you, but there's something going on deeper with them that's causing them to act that way. And it's probably a deep rooted insecurity. They're unhappy with just something in their life. And I think that's kind of the way you have to look at things. Because I've had instances where, yeah, you do start with a client, everything seems really, really great. And then all of a sudden, like, you're getting an email, or maybe they don't even email you. They just stop, they stop communicating with you. And it can be really hurtful in the moment, but you have to realize, okay, it's not a reflection of you, especially if they're not going to communicate and give you feedback. It's probably not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of something they're going through. But I think what you said, Paul, about taking constructive criticism and allowing feedback, I really, really value that with my clients. And I know it's not always easy as a client to tell your coach, hey, I'm not getting this, or I would really prefer if you did this over this. I know that's not always an easy conversation to have, but I'm sure you guys are just like me. If I have a client who tells me that, usually I'm like, wow, okay, thank you for letting me know, right? Because I wouldn't have known you wanted that if unless you wouldn't have or unless you would have told me. So I think being able to take that feedback and that constructive criticism is really important. But also, there are going to be some situations that you have to just realize they're going to happen. They're going to hurt in the moment, but you have to realize they're not always a reflection of anything you did.
Yeah. Look, and some people are not fit for certain people, right?
Yeah.
Selfishly, I'm a lot of people's first coach, but selfishly, I love being someone's second and third coach because you don't know what you don't know, right? And
Right.
I think that we communicate. I know all three of us do, probably far more than most coaches do. when it comes to interacting with your athletes. You know, and but if you haven't worked with someone else, you don't necessarily understand that. And there's
Oh,
nothing wrong with that either, right? So you know, anytime I get feedback, and luckily I don't get a lot of negative feedback because I really do pour my heart into this and I really care. But look, when it happens, I look at them like, okay, what did I do something here, and what could I do to improve it? And I try to look at it objectively. And like Paul said, you know, the first thing you have if somebody's upset, it's like you feel like you let that person down. Now, did I let that person down? Or is it a miscommunication thing? And that's where it comes in the conversation with the client to find out, okay, what's going on here with it? Sometimes, you know, people want to talk, sometimes they don't. And here's the thing too, guys, is we don't always know where someone's at in their life, right? We don't know that. They could be having a really bad day. They could be having issues with their wife or their kids or diagnosed. We have no earthly idea when it
yeah,
comes to things. And
that's a great
not
point.
taking everything personally, even though it's directed at you personally, isn't always the easy way to do it. So take a step back and breathe, look at it objectively, and do the best you can with it, and come
Yeah.
with a resolution.
You're so right. I mean, I think that's just some like the whole you never know what somebody is going through. I mean, no, that's not an excuse for somebody acting poorly, but like I had a client a long time ago and she, you know, chose to discontinue things and it was very out of character, like how she did it. And then I remember she emailed me like a month later, just really upset and apologizing, you know, telling me what she was kind of going through in the moment, why she acted the way she did. So, you know, it's important to just remind yourself of that. You know, you never know what people are going through behind closed doors. So yeah, that was a good
And
question to end on.
just like any sort of relationships, there's boundaries in coaching, right? In any sort of relationship, there's boundaries. And some clients don't want boundaries with things. And if they aren't okay with the boundaries you set and how you communicate, that's totally fine too. It's totally fine.
The best
Just means maybe
compliment
something else.
I ever got as a coach was someone that I coached years ago that came back and coached, and they're like, you know, I thought you were a great coach 5 years ago. They're like, you're a way better coach now. And I'm like, well, that's, you know, that's learning. I don't, no one that's involved in this sport has ever prepared me for what happens when you have too many clients.
Right.
How do you say no? People are willing to give you money to coach them. You say yes until your eyes bleed, and then one day you have a group of people going, well, you're a little late with your replies, and then you go, well, what do I do with this? You know, like, you know, we saw the whole thing happen with Brittany Dawn out in Texas where she was literally just stealing people's money, not sending anything, not answering emails, right? Like, so it can go that way. And when that story came out, I was like, not that I approve it, but I get it. Like you can get overwhelmed very easily. I was luckily in a place in my life where I was like, you know what, I've got to fix this. That's when I hired Steven and he started helping me. And you know, that's really been, and people may not understand this, but when someone's begging you to coach them, please just take my money, please coach me, I need your help, you want to say yes. It's not even a greed thing at times. It's sometimes like a feeling of like, man, I really do need to help this person because there are
Yeah.
some people in bad situations. But I had to disconnect myself from that to be the best coach I could be. So now I have less clients than I used to have, but I have a team of, you know, what are we, 25, 26 coaches now. So I feel very confident. If I can't coach someone, I've got your coach. Like you're going to get a
Yeah.
great coach. And that helps me sleep. But that was a learned behavior. And it's very hard at times. If you get really good at coaching, you know, there are phases where you, things other than coaching because you're become your focus, like running a business, like checking DMs, like my YouTube went nuts. Like now I got a, you know, YouTube channel that's a thriving thing. So like as much as my goal is to be just a coach, there are times where I have to like, okay, allow this to happen. But now with my guiding focus being around being the best coach, I don't do things that will diminish that. Right. So yeah, but that's a learned behavior. So yeah,
That's
I think the best thing anybody can do when they get native feedback or as a coach is take out your anger, take out your, you know, F that person, screw them, and then go, well, why do I feel that way? You know what? Maybe there's a little truth there. Maybe I could do things better. And that's, I think, what's allowed me to continue to get better as a coach is to take inventory every so often and just go, okay, I could be doing things better.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, Paul, about, you know, wanting to help people. And I had a couple examples of it over the past few weeks where people that wanted to work with me in the past, but it wasn't the right time. And then they came and wanted to work with me now. And I'm moving this week. I have 6 or 7 new clients that just signed up this week that I'm trying to get onboarded. And I told her, I was like, I just, it's going to be a few weeks, or we can put you in touch with our client coordinator and get you in touch with another coach. And I felt bad doing that because I know she wanted to work with me. She's reached out multiple times, and I want to be able to help her, but I know I cannot be able to do it right now. It would be half-assed. If she wants it in the next 2 weeks, it's going to be half-assed. And I don't want to put her in that position.
Yep. And that's why we have Sandy, and that's why we have schedules, and that's why we stick to that. And, so.
And here's the big thing with
that's a good way to end it.
Yeah, like here's the thing with Pro Physique is no one is just a number here. Like I can promise you that. But there's a system in the way we want to do things too, so we can handle everyone correctly.
Yeah. And Sandy is amazing. She's our client coordinator. She speaks to every potential client. She knows all the coaches. She's had conversations with all of them about their specialties, what they want to do. So she gets some intimate knowledge into the people coming in and who's going to be the best fit for them. And I think that's really translated well. I mean, our retention rate, our results are all based around the fact that we are getting the right people to the right coach and doing great with that. So if you're a coach, you're struggling, just know that, that's always been a struggle for me. I'm very tuned in to how other people feel. I'm not a sociopath. And I think some of the coaches that just take people's money and don't care about the service, they're actually not in tune with how people feel. And that's something that's I'm very, very in tune with. But there are some just sucky people in this world. And sometimes you just gotta walk away. Anyway, that's it for today episode, guys. Make sure you check back for the events. We are going to be doing the event in Dallas the day after the Texas Pro. I think it's the second week of August.
August, like 11th or 12th. August.
We'll be doing a short seminar. We're going to keep the seminars a little more brief this time around. I'll talk to you guys about that. We're going to do a lot of hands-on training, posing, stuff like that. And Hidden Gym is just fantastic. They're so helpful. So shout out to them. Anyway.
All right.
Talk to you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Sounds good. See y'all.